Not hearing any audio. All right, sounds like we're having a little bit of trouble with the audio. See if we're back again. Is that working for people? All right. We'll go ahead with that unless I hear otherwise. Probably most of you got the gist of those first few slides, as most of the text is contained there as well, so we'll just keep moving along. If you're going to follow along with the conversation on social media, the hashtag is Geonetric. The webinar today is going to run about an hour, and we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. So if you have some questions, go ahead and type them in the Ask a Question box that should appear on your screen. And as always, a recording of this presentation will be posted on geonetric.com in the Learn and Share section in the next few days as well. We really appreciate all the feedback we get back about the webinars. So there's a survey at the end of the webinar. If you would take a moment at the end to complete that survey and then kind of let us know how we're doing with these. As I mentioned before, you may not have been able to hear me. If you're interested in getting a copy of our 2017 Digital Marketing Trends report based out of the survey we just completed, you can indicate that in the survey as well, and we'll make sure to get you a copy. All right, so I'm David Sturtz. I'm Digital Strategy Director here at Geonetric, and I've got about 10 years experience here helping healthcare brands with their online marketing. I've come at it from all different sides, including consulting on digital strategy, creating user-friendly information architectures, building content management software that powers hundreds of websites. So today we're going to take a tour through a few of our favorite things and get some different ideas and just kind of be a little bit creative thinking through what's going on out there in marketing in general and healthcare marketing over the past year. It's a little bit of a year in review. I'm going to start out with trying not to stretch the metaphor too far with the song, but we've got some whiskers on kittens to look at while I kind of explain the process I went through. So can't argue with a cat photo. So this isn't really a comprehensive review. This is mostly me digging through emails, Slack channels, bookmarks, chatting with my colleagues, and finding the things that really resonated with us or that we had kind of made a note of during the year that spoke to something about what we're trying to do on a day-to-day basis with our clients and that you guys are all trying to do out there as you try to connect with your audiences. There's a little bit of stuff in here that we did at Geonetric, but a lot of the stuff was done by other groups. And it's not all straight up web or digital marketing. We tried to mix some things in there. So I just think it's always nice to take a step back, think about some of the fundamental principles that are really driving what we're doing day to day, and kind of have a chance to react to the other things that people are creating out there. So before your boss walks by and sees the cat photo on your screen, we'll switch to some important looking charts. And I just wanted to kind of tie this back into that survey and look at why we may be really focusing in on some of the marketing budget and where the growth is happening and kind of see how some of those trends tie in with the work that we're seeing out there. So as we asked about overall marketing budget into the next year, across the board, we saw that mostly budgets are going to remain the same, but we saw a shift in the increase of digital spending, some growth in that area. So some dollars moving around, even though maybe the total amount of money being spent isn't necessarily increasing. So a similar sort of thing in the number of FTEs, a little bit of growth here, maybe about a third of folks across some different breakdowns of our respondents that were looking to actually increase the number of FTEs dedicated to digital marketing. A lot of folks keeping teams pretty much the same coming into the next year. Lastly, I wanted to call out some of the roles that we're particularly seeing growth in, and this relates back to some of the examples we'll be looking at. So there's a lot of hiring planned in the content marketing space, a lot in writing or editing, social media, and we're seeing a good-sized growth in CRM, especially considering that the staffing levels around that have been relatively low. So a lot of focus organizations are putting on their marketing efforts coming into the next year. A lot of growth in different ways, some shift in how people are spending and where they're putting their time and energy. And as we go through some of the examples, we'll kind of be able to speak to that. So looking back, it was quite a year, right? It's a lot of ups and downs this year, a lot of different things going on, pretty intense year all around. And I think just to kick it off, one of the campaigns that came across my desk that really, I think, embraced all of the weirdness in the year in a way that was really right on brand for Spotify was this out-of-home campaign that they've just recently launched here towards the end of the year. So kind of building off of some work they did last year that was really, I think, widely admired. The end of year in music campaign that they had done that really collected together a lot of different stats and information about what people are listening to on their service, pulling all of that together. They took that and used that data to inspire them to really connect with the people that are in their audience and to understand kind of maybe some of the emotions or some of the things that would resonate with their audience. So a couple of examples of these were, billboards or different out-of-home treatments of some of the concepts. But I think what they've really done here that's really interesting and potentially applicable to healthcare, they've given the semblance of some data and used that to really help to personalize the message that's going out there. So it feels very much like they know you, that they are connecting with you, and that this is kind of written for you. While there's, this is obviously, it's a billboard, so it's not a one-to-one type of communication, but it does give you a little bit of that sense that the data information that they have is connecting in that way. So that gets me to kind of the first principle that I'm going to kind of lean on through this is really understanding your audience. And as I'm going through these principles, these aren't earth-shattering by any means, but sometimes it's good to go back to why does this work? What is it about this that really is making this effective, and what was coming out of that campaign that you could really point to that says this is why it was working. So a lot of times when we talk about understanding the audience, we think of something like this, where we've got some demographics, numbers, stats that are driving this. What I want you to picture in your head is something a little bit more like this. So this sort of rock concert, you want your raving fans. You want those people that are really excited about your brand and really engaged with it, and being able to touch base with them and see right where they're at in order to connect up and speak to them. And that's what I think that Spotify campaign really did well, is really speaking and bringing some humor and some insight to that particular audience. Another project that I came across recently launched, Johns Hopkins launched this site called Y2Connect. And we get a lot of questions about microsites. And one of the key recommendations that we have around when it's a good idea to launch a microsite or avoid that and integrate things into a main website is really around audience. If you're trying to address a completely different audience, a distinct audience with a different set of content or a different purpose behind it, that's usually a good indication that a microsite might be a good idea, that you're not trying to splinter your online presence too much, that really this is pointed towards a different audience. And what I thought was interesting about this project is this is a different audience than I've seen. I've been working in the industry quite a while. I haven't seen a lot of projects that are really trying to connect with this sort of 15 to 25-year-old demographic. They said in some of the write-ups that they're really trying to balance that across both young men and young women, where there's oftentimes a lot of focus on young women and their healthcare, trying to make sure that they've covered both sides of that, and they've really pulled up some healthcare issues that are probably top of mind for folks in that group. So I thought this was an interesting example of an audience that we don't often see addressed online. They've got an accompanying app that goes along with this, that gets access to this information. And really how this website works, it's really a directory of different resources that are available, whether that's information or local agencies and groups that are out there to help kids in that particular demographic. So kind of a cool project that we ran across. This is a project that we actually did here at Genetric. It was a website relaunch for UNM Health. They were going through a rebranding, pulling it under that UNM Health moniker, and really wanted to relaunch their overall web presence, pull the things together. And as anybody who's been through this can attest, it's a massive undertaking to try to pull all of those threads into one place and to get everybody on the same page. But the way that they've particularly addressed their audience in this, kind of bringing it back to that understanding who you're trying to speak to in any of these marketing projects, they had an interesting stat that about 40% of their rural patients relied on dial-up internet. And as a key audience that they were trying to serve, that's a big constraint on what you can do and how you need to have that experience. So a lot of times we're looking at these sites, we're looking at these projects, and we're sitting at work at our desk with our large monitors, and we've got our corporate internet bandwidth going on, and we're really looking for those things that are flashy and sparkly and have lots of animation and things going on. Really, we want to judge a lot of these things by that end audience and thinking about what is the experience for somebody who's out there in the middle of New Mexico on that dial-up connection. What is that going to be like for them? Maybe they're on a computer there, maybe they're on a mobile device, making sure that we've got all of those bases covered. And so that was really a focus in this project to make sure that the way that pages were designed and the way that from a technical standpoint, everything came together, making sure that it was designed around that idea of loading quickly. So another principle I wanted to touch on that I saw kind of come through in a number of different projects was really taking advantage of the moment. So there's something to the timeliness and being able to speak to an audience right in a particular moment that can be really, really powerful. And the campaign that I wanted to kick this off with, some of you may have seen this, but it was the rebranding campaign for North Shore Long Island Jewish as they became Northwell Health. And this really kicked off the year as well. So they sent out a number of crews, I think about 4 different crews, on New Year's Eve into their hospitals to try to record a birth that took place at one of their hospitals on New Year's Day. So this kind of the New Year's baby taken to extreme, and then tied that into a whole campaign about the rebirth of their brand. And so I think the shout out here, a lot of times we really recognize the creative folks. I would give a shout out here to the project managers that made all of that happen during that particular time, getting everything through, and then they turned that into an ad during the Super Bowl time frame to help really cement that idea. But a really cool way to use that timeliness, tell a story, and make a real positive change as they were reinventing themselves and rebranding. So some cool work there. Another kind of timely thing here, certainly for us in the Midwest, with the Cubs being in the World Series, Advocate Children's Hospital really took advantage of that. And this was called out by Lindsay, one of our digital marketing folks here. She had noticed that they were doing a really nice job with photo contests on their social media pages. And so one of these was around supporting the Cubs, and there was another kind of a costume contest going on there in their NICU as well. So just some different ways of using things that are going on, on the calendar to really support their marketing efforts, whether that's through social media and these sort of really high engagement contest sort of campaigns, or whether that's through a more in-depth campaign strategy. As you're thinking about social media, this was a project that we worked on this year, incorporating that into the website. And this is a trend that we see is social media is really great for having that timely content, but we're looking at new and different ways to get that incorporated into the website that are moving beyond just that embed that comes from Twitter or from Facebook to get the most recent posts. So this was a project we did for St. Mary's in Evansville, Indiana, and it was one of our designers called this out to me as one of his favorite projects that he'd worked on this year, is really having a nice visual presentation to the way that these stories come in and having it match the overall look and feel of the website and not feeling like something distinct and different from the rest of the homepage. Oops. All right. So of course, it's probably been drilled into everybody's head that one of the things that we try to do as marketers is to tell a compelling story. And you know, a lot of times it takes going back to those storytelling roots, you know, kind of that story arc that we try to encapsulate through each piece, and thinking about that and seeing where that fits in some really interesting ways. I've got a number of examples here that really rely on that storytelling approach to make a difference. One of the ones that was passed along to me, I had kind of forgotten about, but this was back during the Oscars towards the beginning of the year, really fun commercial for Android, and kind of pulling together all of the differences between rock, paper, and scissors here and working together as a team. So they're really trying to celebrate diversity, but speaking to their fragmented market that they're working in, and how do we come together to help each other out. So kind of a fun spot there, but really if you take a look through that, there's a nice story to be told and a certain amount of curiosity that's involved from the audience of figuring out, okay, what's exactly going on here, and then that realization of, you know, that rock, paper, scissors theme that's happening. So it's kind of a typical arc that we see in a lot of healthcare ads as well. This is another one that came across my radar this fall. So this is Macy's commercial around Thanksgiving time. And what I thought was interesting about this is I'm just going to go out on a limb and say this one didn't work for me. As I saw it, this was not, I felt a little bit manipulated. It was one of those commercials you start into and you're like, they're going to make me cry. You know, that's exactly what they're starting in to do here. And so there's something about this that I thought was interesting to call out. You know, obviously very well produced. It tells a very clear story. But at the same time, it hits a lot of the notes that I think I see hit over and over again in healthcare marketing. It tells the story of this boy who's seeing the Macy's parade, and he sees the Santa Claus balloon, and then if you haven't seen it over time, it goes back and back again. Then 1 year he's missing from the parade, and Santa Claus balloon goes to try and find him, and finds him sitting at home. And so it kind of tells some of the same story that I think a lot of healthcare marketing tells, of that care over time, or kind of that lifelong arc. But for me, this one just kind of fell a little bit flat, and kind of felt a little bit too much like something a story that I'd seen before that was trying to get a particular emotion out of me. So I think it's a reminder to really kind of pay attention and figure out sort of the authenticity of that story. You know, if this was the real story of a real person, I might have reacted to it differently than this fictionalized version. As far as some good versions of that in healthcare that I've seen, this was a campaign from MU Health. It was called Yes Finds a Way. I thought it was just a really particularly effective version of, you know, the ability of, particularly here in academic medical center, to be able to say yes to patients that they're coming across to this theme that so often we hear no. They're all about saying yes and finding that answer. And so they had a great way to build some drama here. This is another Super Bowl type time frame for the ad, and really pulling together a lot of those different elements that come into play in their care experience, and helping to be able to say yes to patients, which I thought was a really positive message. Another one that just came up on my radar this week. So this was a video published out, I believe, Monday by Orlando Health. And I thought just in general, their work over the last year deserves a call out with the Pulse nightclub shooting that took place, that they took in all the patients from. This is a video they put out looking back on that on Monday, and I think it tells a really compelling story, not just for patients but also especially for healthcare providers about the need to be ready for any type of emergency situation, and all of the commitment that their team members showed, and the way that impacted their community. It's just a really powerful video, and something I would definitely recommend everybody go take a look at. And like I said, it just published on Monday, it looked like, on Facebook. So I think they're probably still kind of ramping up kind of awareness around this. The image on the lower right there, piece out of the video where several of the nurses that were involved taking care of patients all had tattoos kind of commemorating that experience. So you can really see how it affected everybody inside the organization, as well as hearing from those patients and folks outside the organization as well. So something that I think a really, really powerful example of telling a story and having that, it's full on authenticity here. This is a real true story in the way that they tell it. So you'll notice I've talked a lot about video. This is something we found in the survey as well, that people really feel that video is one of the most effective things that they're using out there. I think this is across healthcare marketing in particular. I think we have it kind of drilled into our head that we can tell a really captivating story through video. One of the most used tactics in the content marketing arsenal that we saw out there, and like I said, one of the things that people feel is most effective. Where we saw sort of a gap here is obviously articles on the website are highly used. You can see that spike up there in the middle around that. Not necessarily something that people feel is the most effective thing out there. And so I kind of wanted to reframe that and give a little bit of thought to that idea of how we use the content on our website to tell a story, and kind of call out that it's relatively easy. Certainly putting any of these ads together and trying to encapsulate a broad story about the organization in 60 seconds is a huge challenge. But I would argue it's also an enormous challenge to encapsulate a much more detailed story about an organization through a website and all of the hundreds of pages that may be contained there. And I think it's sometimes hard to appreciate all of that. And so this was a project we did this year that really, attempted to do that for a long-term client of ours, Avera Health. We've been working with them since 2005. And it's really not an overnight process, as you can tell, to evolve that story and to pull all of those threads together in a way that presents a cohesive story. So this was kind of an ongoing project to create that uniform doorway for them that gives access to their entire health system, making sure that it connects across all of their different service lines, and making sure that people can find those resources that are close to home for them. So they're spread across a larger geographic area, and that's a piece of the puzzle there. So it involves some reorganizing of content, continuing to move towards really focusing on those services and pulling everything together into an overall user experience that really tells that compelling singular story for the entire organization. So again, like I said, not an overnight process by any means, but certainly a challenge that we see a lot of organizations facing is how to tell that singular story, while they've got what may have been historically a number of different organizations coming together, dealing with this across a number of geographic touch points, and really trying to pull all of those pieces together. So I wanted to mention the idea of staying on brand and where you can take brand through some of these efforts. And I thought the winner here for me was Snapchat this year with the launch of their Spectacles product. And so I'm sure many of you saw this happening. But it was obviously a really fun, engaging thing that they're up to with putting these vending machines out in strange locations, creating sort of an artificial scarcity of the product, and kind of having this viral effect of everybody talking about this particular product launch. There's a certain amount of mystery to this. They've got that buzz going on. You can tell just from the photo here, they had a lot of fun with it, but it really supported a lot of their central brand and their central user experience. So it's, the impermanence of these vending machines at these locations really fits with, what Snapchat is all about. These, having a more ephemeral approach to social media. Of course, what followed on, as we've seen with any number of social media platforms, immediately a physician has now recorded some surgery with the spectacles, so I thought that was kind of funny. It seems like no matter what we invent now, somebody is using that to present a surgery. But it was kind of an interesting approach that physician took as well. This is part of a teaching hospital, and he was exploring how to use that video to help residents learn about the different steps in a surgical process. So kind of an interesting application of that new approach to video. So another way to kind of stretch your brand tends to be on social media. And so this was a site that was passed along by some other members of my team here. And I think it was maybe partially a dare to actually see if this would fit into the presentation. But I think it's actually a great example of taking, a brand and fitting it into, in this case, it's a Tumblr blog. And so the way that people approach Tumblr is just, a little bit different from anything else out there. And so Denny's, in this case, has taken their brand and is really creating a lot of different fun content that goes around with all of the, particular food items and things that they have there. So everything from this sort of floating restaurant hovering out there in the clouds. If you go to that page, just a lot of insanity going on there. But just kind of a reminder to be native, I guess, when you're participating in a lot of these different platforms. It's easy to try to have a uniform, singular voice, but also keep that, you're too often, I think, keeping that tone too consistent. Here, they've got that same voice, but it's a slightly different tone as they get into the kind of crazy world of Tumblr. Thinking about how you can adjust the tone of your brand's voice as you approach different platforms, making sure that you're speaking in the right voice for that particular platform. And carrying on with the theme of being a little bit irreverent, this was a TV spot that several folks around here had shared. Cigna, I believe, was behind this. So this is the TV Doctors of America, and really kind of poking a little bit of fun at the idea of the TV doctors and showing some appreciation for the physicians, I think, that are doing this for real every day. But using humor, again, to connect with folks about that healthcare experience, and they're doing it in a particularly interesting way. One of the themes that kept popping up for me as I was researching and trying to pull some ideas together for this was the idea of nostalgia. It seemed to be something throughout the past year that has really popped up. I know we've had a lot of discussions internally about the show Stranger Things and beyond just kind of talking about what happened on the last episode of that show, looking at how it really tapped into a certain kind of nostalgia, how it carried that through in a lot of the visual design and a lot of the different notes that it hit from a visual and storytelling perspective. They really tapped into some kind of nostalgia there. Seeing that in other places as well. So, of course, there's the Nintendo Classic Mini, so the palm-sized version of that Nintendo that many of us know and love from our childhoods, that kind of came out in time for Christmas, and kind of tapping back into that era and those different products. The reboot of Ghostbusters, I think, fits in that vein as well. Even I would go as far as to say, the Pokemon Go and some of those different apps that were really popular this year, we're tapping a little bit into that nostalgia and trying to, move that in different directions. So along those lines, certainly something to think about, how that may fit with your brand and how in different places that you might be able to use some of that nostalgia to connect with your audience. This was an interesting project I ran across this year from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, their Vaccine Education Center, really trying to engage young people with ideas around vaccinations. Obviously a big area of education, getting facts and information out there around that, as well as from just a STEM education point of view, something that really is an opportunity to connect with students and teach them something about the healthcare field. So they took a really kind of a old school Nintendo throwback approach to the graphics for this, and it's kind of a fun project to go play around with, and speaks a little bit to that nostalgia that's going on. So another idea of thinking broadly about the brand, I thought this was just a really nice project from Expedia and St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. And this is, in this case, it's really Expedia thinking broadly about their brand around travel. And the idea here was to share the power of travel. So they really are trying to tap into this idea that travel can change your life, that it can make a big impact, and that it is a powerful thing that they're offering to their key audience of travelers. And so they collaborated with this project with St. Jude to take 360 video in a number of different locations and to beam that into a 360-degree sort of virtual experience. So not using VR goggles, because that was not really going to work for the patients in this scenario, but allowing a number of the different children there to experience kind of one of the things that they were really interested in, that they couldn't necessarily get out and experience because they needed to be in the hospital. So this was a little girl that was, kind of obsessed with horses. You can see her here coloring horses. She's really into that. And one of the Expedia folks took this camera out and had a conversation with her as she's traveling around in Argentina with wild horses, and creating this, like I said, a 360-degree experience for this child. A number of different places that they went with this, including underwater and into, I think, a rainforest, an archaeological dig, different things to really engage the kids. But I think what is really fascinating out of this is the way that Expedia saw this, approach to care in a certain way as a piece of their brand, that there is something kind of life-affirming about travel, something powerful about that they were looking for a way to share. So it built on both of those brands together. Another good reminder to kind of think about collaboration and ways of working things together. So here's my one kind of warning sign out of these. I think there was a little bit of a sense this year as well that marketing isn't everything. So this is the Theranos CEO here, and I think a lot of us in the healthcare industry kind of watched that company just kind of stumble and then sort of implode throughout the year. And a lot of times, we get caught up in this idea of really telling the story and speaking in this marketing way, pulling all these things together, setting this really big vision for what we're doing out there. And I think this is an important reminder that, it's more than just marketing. It's more than just disruptive innovation. There has to be something there behind it. The product has to be good in order to make this all work. And so sometimes it takes a little bit of a step back from, okay, what's the story, to making sure that whatever that product is that is there, whatever that patient experience is that they're having, that is really as good as we need it to be in order to be able to go out there and really speak loudly about it. So a lot of examples there. Wanted to pull in some specifically and kind of call them out that are really shaping the user experience for folks. So outside of kind of just inspiring in general, some of the marketing approaches we might be taking, wanted to take a look at a little bit outside of healthcare and then pulling that back in again, what those user experiences are that are kind of setting the bar for users and where that may be going, in the year ahead. And I'm going to bring up Snapchat again. So just to kind of give everybody a sense of what news and information is like inside of Snapchat, because I know not everybody is in there using that platform. It's got a really particular demographic around it. But these are some different news articles and how they're kind of presented within Snapchat. Very animated, a lot of color going on here. There's a certain style to this. It's mobile only. You're only interacting with this stuff on your mobile device. And then over on the right-hand side, the dog photo there is actually an ad. So ads that are fully integrated here as well that really just feel like any other content on the platform. And why I bring this up is another new site that's recently launched. So this is called The Outline. It's a news site from Josh Topolsky. So he was a co-founder of The Verge, which was a Vox Media project. If you kind of follow some of that, I used to be the editor-in-chief of Engadget. So kind of somebody out there in the media side of the industry taking a similar approach to a media property, a new media property, and looking at, telling a story through some of these same sorts of interaction models. So something that is more exploratory rather than being so linear, that is just a little bit, for some of us, I think feels a little bit more crazy in how it's presented. It's a little bit more disruptive of an experience. But similar kind of thing to what's going on inside of Snapchat that they're taking to the web here. And I would encourage you, if you're looking at the site, go out there on your mobile device. It's definitely keyed in for a mobile experience much more so than a desktop experience. But they've got longer form content here mixed in with a lot of these, interactive animations, bright colors, and a lot of stuff coming at you. And also weaving in some of those advertisements that just feel really native, mixed in with the rest of the content. So again, here on the right-hand side is an ad for Method, the kind of soap and cleaning products company that just, you can tell, just fits right in with everything else that you're looking at on the site. So something to be thinking about, and the reason that I bring this up is I think a lot of times in healthcare, when we're doing content marketing, when we're creating these articles, when we're telling the story through kind of ongoing content engagement, a lot of times we're not thinking too far outside of the box about what does that interaction look like? How exploratory can we make that experience that somebody is having as they're reading a particular article and looking at other things that are coming up on the site? It's not necessarily the same kind of experience, or doesn't need to be the same kind of experience where you're looking for a particular piece of information. You need to find the right answer. These are much more about exploring the content and seeing what you can find and just engaging with it in sort of a different way. So something to think about as these continue to evolve. It'll be interesting to see where some of these go next. Wanted to use another TV spot to kind of introduce another kind of user experience thing that we're seeing out there. So this was a United Healthcare spot. I'm sure many of you saw with the guy pole vaulting there over a pool and winding up in probably urgent care there. So kind of a humorous spot that really, I think, connected with people about the dumb things people do and kind of the results of that. But at the same time that he's taking on this vault, presumably his wife is over there with the mobile phone looking up the quickest, closest urgent care location. And so you've got a number of things coming together that we see happening in healthcare. You've got that mobile, access to the information anywhere, being able to find the thing that's close and convenient to you. And they're also pulling in what the out-of-pocket costs would be for each of these different locations. So a lot of the pricing transparency that we're really working towards getting out there and being able to present that to patients. So I can see some of the other themes that we often see, ratings and reviews and other information that fit right into this kind of experience that they're laying out there for folks. Taking that almost a step further, one of the things we saw this year was huge influx in a number of different organizations trying to engage on social media in kind of a different way. So Facebook opened up Messenger to allow some bots and different communication tools to be built on top of that. And a number of organizations kind of rushed into that to explore what can be done there. How might these interaction models work for helping to support their customers through kind of the ubiquitous Facebook Messenger platform. So we saw things like KLM being able to get flight info and do some other things through Facebook Messenger. And Iceland Air took that a step further, actually allowing you to book flights through Facebook Messenger. We see that a number of other businesses, major brands, Burger King, 1-800-Flowers, have taken a similar approach, really kind of seeing where they can take that experience of interacting with people through that kind of text-based messaging platform, something that's always on, always available. So it'll be interesting to see how this starts to get woven into healthcare. Obviously, there's a lot of privacy concerns and other things going on in the healthcare space that make this a little bit more of a challenge. But as far as where that consumer's expectation is being set, there's a real sort of instantaneous response that is happening here that is raising that bar in the consumer's mind about how they should be able to interact with an organization. You've got that sort of instantaneous component. You've got an asynchronous, being able to send a message and then get back to it when I want to. I don't have to sit on hold on the phone and have my day tied up until I get that conversation, that I can kind of go back and forth from different conversations. Another technology direction that we're definitely seeing out there, and a lot of push around this with the holiday season here, but the Amazon Echo, the Echo Dot, and then of course the Google Home device, all of these voice search and voice-driven types of interfaces on top of Siri and some of these other things that are baked into our mobile devices. We're really seeing that voice-based ubiquitous search is changing the way that people are starting to interact with information. We're keeping a close eye on this and what this means for how we present online content, how we address findability in this world where people are speaking their search commands rather than typing them in. We do see already a little bit of a shift in how people maybe phrase things when they're speaking versus searching on a device or typing in their search terms. So something to keep an eye on around that user expectation. Certainly this, similar to the Facebook Messenger concept, the idea that whatever I want is going to be plugged into this device, is going to be connected in a different way. That starts to set an expectation for consumers that they can access whatever information it is or whatever business that they want to interact with in this new and different way. So we'll definitely see where this goes in the coming year and whether some of these devices take off or not. But really starting to change maybe how people are interacting with information. So continuing on the Google theme, we had a few different things that Google has done over the past year that we were fans of and wanted to kind of call out. Definitely some big changes from the Google standpoint during 2016. The first thing that I am a huge fan of, so this is probably my favorite of the favorite things, is Google is going to begin using pop-ups, especially on mobile devices, that are intrusive to affect page rank. So I don't know about you, but I really hate when you land on that site and about a second and a half after you land there, all of a sudden a pop-up takes over your screen asking for some information or presenting you some kind of an offer. So something to keep in mind as you're planning out some of your online projects in the next year, that Google is really looking at what is that mobile user experience, and you'll see that theme come up with a number of different things that they've done during the past year. That's going to continue into next year. They're really trying to make the experience for mobile users super fast, super convenient, and anything that is going to get in the way of that, like these pop-up interstitials, is going to affect rank and going to affect the way that Google perceives your site. So while we may be fans of some of these may present more of a challenge in how we are going to address them on our websites. So this is something, just FYI, probably mid-January it looks like, is going to start affecting some of the Google rank according to what they posted on their blog. The other item we've been talking a lot about recently is the way that we're treating HTTP and HTTPS, so secure connections, the SSL layer added on to HTTP, of how people are accessing your website. And of course, we've always used that secure connection for any situation where people are submitting information or sharing information. That's pretty much always been there for the healthcare industry. What we're starting to see now is that secure connection being used across an entire browsing experience to help to protect any information that's being shared back and forth during that interaction with the site. And so this has been a ranking factor indicated by Google for a little while now. They had some indications even back into 2014 that was going to become a ranking signal. We're seeing that continue, and we're seeing some changes actually in the Chrome browser coming up as well, that are going to help to encourage that as well. So making it more clear to users when they're not on a secure connection. That's kind of always been just the default assumption, and then they really give you that green lock icon when you're on a secure connection. They're headed towards actually calling it out as it being not secure when you're on what we used to consider more of a standard web connection. So something to be looking at and considering. There's a number of different layers in the technical implementation of this that you want to be thinking through, especially if you're working with third parties with other different subdomains and different items coming in to form that website experience, how all of those things are going to connect together. But definitely something to be beginning to think about into the next year. A couple more things on the Google front. AMP pages, we're continuing to watch how those are spreading throughout different types of content. We've really seen, certainly with news articles, and as I was doing some cooking for Thanksgiving, all of the recipes that I was searching for kept popping up in these, rich snippet results, and using AMP. You could really see a difference if you clicked on one that had the AMP designation there. These are accelerated mobile pages. It's a particular kind of markup, a project that Google has latched onto that will help to speed up the delivery of those pages to especially mobile browsers. So it kind of reduces some of the overall site experience. It really standardizes a lot of things that are going on the site and allows that to be delivered in a much, much faster process to that end user. One of the things that's interesting to me about the way that these are being presented within Google, if you click on these, it almost basically becomes a modal pop-up within Google. So you haven't really left the site necessarily. You're seeing that content and then kind of closing out of that rather than going back and forth from Google. So again, they're trying to get those answers, especially to mobile users, right within Google itself, and trying to get them the information they need as quickly as possible. So as I mentioned, these rich snippets that are coming up that have turned into rich cards. So you can see on the lower right there that recipes and different things that are popping up now with ratings and all kinds of information going on. So this is kind of the evolution of schema.org markup, that structured data that we've been talking about for quite a while. That's really starting to make its way through different types of content and affecting the presentation of that information in Google. So something to definitely have on your radar going forward. It's going to continue to affect a lot of things. So to kind of try to bring all of this together, I think this was one of those presentations that is really more about asking a lot of questions than having a lot of answers. So hopefully it got your brains turning a little bit around some different ideas that may engage with your particular situation, some things that might be a good fit for projects that you've got going on. And just some of those key questions that it's always good to go back and kind of think through. Okay, what do we know about our audience? Is there a timeliness factor that we can leverage for this? What does this mean for our brand? Can we reach and stretch our brand in a different way that really fits with this audience, with this particular channel that we're trying to use? How do all of those things come together? And overall, what is that experience that we're trying to create? What is that user expectation? What are they seeing outside of interacting with us that is setting that expectation? And how can we, really push ourselves forward to meet that expectation as much as we can? So with that, I want to send you out to go make something amazing. And I had to slip the warm woolen mittens in here somewhere. But I really wanted to encourage everybody to kind of take some of this information and go forward. And with that, I wanted to try to answer some questions. We've got a few questions that have come in. If you do have a question, there should be a box on your screen that says Ask a Question. You can type it in there, and we'll get through as many as we have time for here. A couple of them that are coming in. How would you recommend finding out who your audience really is in a rural area? And is there a particular type of survey that gets a good response? One of the things that I would encourage you to do, particularly would work well for a rural area, anybody, I think, really, is getting beyond, the surveys are useful. You can get a broad sample that way. I think for making that really deep connection with your audience, getting face-to-face with, a few individuals, having conversations, asking a lot of open-ended questions can be a really good way to get a deeper understanding than you can even get through a survey. And so I think if you're particularly struggling in a rural area, and we work with a lot of clients that are, they're kind of the place to go out in the middle of, kind of in the middle of nowhere. There aren't a lot of people around to survey. It's hard to get a lot of that information that is really applicable to your particular area. The more you can get out and talk to people and learn, what they're dealing with, how they're interacting with your messages, with your marketing materials, with your website, and understanding what's going on there. It can be a little bit more time consuming, but I think the information you get can really help to inform at more of a nuanced level some of the decisions that you're making. How important is getting a photo release for social media? That is a question that I would probably defer to the lawyers. It kind of depends on how you're doing that. I think a lot of these, like I was showing that Advocate Children's Hospital photo campaign, a lot of those, if you're doing a photo contest, it incorporates that photo release into the whole process. Obviously, you would want to check with your legal department to determine what exactly works for your organization. And certainly if you're dealing with photos kind of inside the walls, that can be quite a bit different than what people are submitting on their own outside of that. But typically that's how a lot of those contests are handled, where as you upload that or as you post that or contribute that to the contest, there are some disclaimers and some content that you check off through that process. Will pop-ups affect the Google PageRanks for the sites carrying the advertising or the sites being advertised? So a lot of the pop-ups that we're seeing are actually more or less ads for the sites that they're on. So a lot of these are, you go to a blog and it pops up with a please subscribe to our newsletter. It kind of takes over the experience. Or you go to an e-commerce site and it pops up a discount offer that really prevents you from getting where you're going. I think Google is really cracking down. It really is in keeping with other things that they've tracked down on in the past, where it looks like you can get to the content, but then there's something in your way when you get there. So as I understand it, it's going to affect the sites that have the pop-ups appearing on them. So if your ad is appearing in one of those pop-ups, I don't believe that would affect you. But it would be, if you have a blog and you're trying to get email newsletter signups and you're using that kind of interstitial pop-up to try to accomplish that, that's something that I would definitely take a look at quickly here and see how that may be affecting, how Google would be looking at that. So a question about the webinar being offered again or recorded. We do record all of the webinars and they're available on the website, so definitely check it out there. And with that, I think we'll kind of close questions, and I've got a couple other things just to walk through in case you missed this at the beginning. The 2017 Digital Marketing Trends in Healthcare Survey that we just recently completed is available in the next few days. We'll be sending out links to PDFs and things like that. If you were one of the first set of respondents to the survey, you got a paper copy in the mail that was headed out this week, so you should be getting that at any moment. But if you would like to receive a copy, just indicate that in the survey at the end of this webinar, or go to geonetric.com/marketing survey, and you'll be able to get that copy there as well. A couple of things to call out within the Learn and Share section of the Geonetric website. If you go to geonetric.com/webinars, you can see a list of our webinars that are available on demand, including November's webinar, which was Ben Dillon, our Chief Strategy Officer, talking through the results of that survey. So if you wanted to get a sense of kind of our perspective and have somebody kind of walk you through the survey results, that would be a great thing to go check out. There's a lot of great content there available at that URL. So if you're kind of sitting around the office and it's getting kind of quiet in the next few weeks, head over there and check out some information from before. Want to call out as well, in January we'll be back with kind of a forward-looking trends presentation on looking at the macro trends within healthcare and how they're going to relate to marketing efforts in the coming year. Again, we're going to be looking at some of the technology things that are coming out there and what we're paying attention to there, and how you might want to plan for the year ahead. So with that, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next year.